Hello. Today I wanted to talk about my CAV GT and a reoccurring issue I've been having with my starter motor not engaging properly on the flywheel ring gear. This is something that started to happen not long after I purchased the car in spring of 21. And last year I took it apart and the ring gear was rather chewed up. So I had a local transmission place, reinstall or take off the old ring gear, install a new one, and then I had the starter motor shot peened and had a different pinion gear installed on it as the index wasn't quite right. So I was kind of, well, I should say I was hopeful that that would work. Put it back together, was able to start the engine, but after a couple starts, it was starting to make the reoccurring um, grinding noise, if you will. So this unit is a 9-inch. Typically, a small block Ford would have 11-inch flywheel, and so there's more torque applied, or more tension applied to this starter ring gear system, and so everything's got to be just right for it to work. It's a relatively high compression. It's a 10-to-1 motor, big pistons. It's a stroker 351 based motor. It's a 427. It's got good dynamic compression with the heads and the cam, so everything needs to work good. The reason why it's a 9-inch is the transaxle that this is mated to is out of an Audi. It's an Oe1 manufactured by Getrag. It's a 6-speed unit. This is a relatively common transaxle for these replica Ford GT40s. If a guy could find a ZF out of a Pantera, early 70s Pantera, those are rather robust units. They are, however, rare and expensive. So this is a readily available, common, decent transaxle, a little undersized, I would say. It has a 7.5-inch final drive, which is small, in my opinion, for an engine of this caliber. I probably wouldn't have installed myself a tall deck small block Ford. I probably went with a 347 short deck, but this is what the importer did, because it has that magical number being a 427, which is kind of odd, as this is a Ford GT40 Mark 1, and you can tell that most readily by the single scoop in the deck lid versus a twin scoop in the big block 427 GT40 Mark IIs that won Le Mans in '66. It's a small block Ford, so at least they got that right, but it's a rather big small block Ford. So I took it apart again this year and discovered that the adapter plate, which is used to adapt the small block Ford bell housing to the Audi transaxle, which mounts along here, was cracked right down here. And so that, I am sure, had an issue or had something to do with the starter motor wanting to ride on top of the ring gear. So I had this welded up earlier this week, and not only was it cracked, and the reason why I think it was cracked is a couple reasons. There were slots in here and holes for some application that doesn't apply to mine. So this was completely all welded up, and in fact welded up this hole that was, when I took it apart, was actually stripped out, and that holds this plate on. So this plate is what covers the bottom portion of the bell housing, if you will, covering the flywheel. And this plate, I would think, does add some strength, mounted all along here, adds strength to the whole thing. So I'm hopefully that this will correct my issue going forward. There are other options, but it's money. And so I wanted to see what I could do with what I have, obviously, and try to make it work. The CAV GT, otherwise, is an interesting car. This is a way that mere mortals can have the GT40 experience. Not a very expensive car. Um, they're manufactured, if you will, in South Africa, and the drivetrain is completed by the importer, in this case, the importer in the United States. And dimensionally correct chassis, rear suspension. For the most part, the front suspension does use rubber bushings, which was not accurate to the racing GT40s, but the rear is all spherical joints, or Heim joints in the rear. And so it's pretty authentic in terms of the look and the dimensions. The boxed chassis is stainless steel. The body is fiberglass. And I would say, in terms of the paint quality, the fiberglass quality, the manufacturing, everything that they've done with this car, I would say, is really, really, really well done. It does have air conditioning, which I would not know how you could drive this car without air conditioning, because you're literally otherwise baking in the sun. The car has knockoffs with period correct Avon tires with a 60 tread wear number, which is the lowest I've ever seen on a DOT tire. So I'm sure they're going to wear rather quickly, but they look absolutely correct for the car. And the car does ride and drive pretty good. The only thing is, when you are in traffic, albeit the limited amount of time that I've actually been able to drive this car, it's rather intimidating because you're so low, and you sit very low in the car, and everybody's kind of looking at you, and you feel very conspicuous. It prefers the open road, which is fine, and it definitely has a nose for speed, no pun intended. It definitely seems like, you know, the 200 mile per hour top speed of these cars is no joke. When I originally got it, I was having ignition issues, and the importer installed an HEI distributor. For reasons, I believe, space. The HEI unit that they installed was looked like a cap size you would normally see for like points, and it had an external HEI bridge alongside of it. I was getting intermittent spark. I didn't know why. I chalk it up to being a very cheap Chinese distributor, and I subsequently installed an MSD with this crab style cap, which is very low. It allows you to have room for your wires and whatnot. And then I replaced the HEI is the ignition, and I replaced that with a Mallory box I had on the shelf, and then reused the coil that was there. They had the coil mounted on the engine. Didn't like that, so I put it over there. And then I also replaced the rubber fuel lines with a braided fuel line, and added this basically splitter. It's a dual feed 750 vacuum secondary carburetor, and I added this splitter that actually has a bit of volume in there, so it actually helps with cooling, keeping the fuel cooler. And I added the retro sort of period correct turkey pan, and that also has the effect of keeping engine heat away from the induction. So overall, right now, the car runs great. Sounds really cool with the 180-degree exhaust. And so now it's just a matter of getting that starter working and take it for a ride.